Who are the best tight ends in the 2023 NFL draft, and what is their potential for good fantasy football fits here this season? It's time to break it down right here, right now, as we begin another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. Check out all the good stuff, all kinds of mock drafts for you. I have my 7-rounder. We have now a mock draft with trades you can check out. So good stuff all around, as well as my big board of the top 140 players, best players by position. And we're doing some positional breakdowns here for you for the 2020 NFL Draft on Locked On Fantasy Football. We took care of quarterbacks. We took care of running backs. We looked at wide receivers. Now we're up to the tight ends in a very good tight end class. Well, we've been lamenting not a lot of great fantasy football value here at this position. We've been looking at the top guys, Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, George Kittle. After that, it's been a struggle. We've seen Darren Waller, Dallas Goedert, some of these guys that we really relied upon did not come through as well. So we're looking for more tight end one options. We're going to get quite a few here. Some are going to have that type of impact, maybe as early as this season, but maybe you look at year two, usually when things kick in for tight ends, that you'll see a lot of value there. So really excited about this class. I'm going to break it down in full for you. This is my favorite position in the NFL. Why? Because it's versatile. You can make a lot of plays here. You can block, you can run, you can tackle if the quarterback throws an interception, but the thing you want to do is catch balls downfield if you're a tight end, and that's what we want in fantasy football. Luckily, we have a class that can do that for sure this year. So thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first this day. We're free and available to you on all platforms. So let's dive right in here to the tight end class. We're going to focus on the number one guy. We're going to give him his own segment. Yep, Michael Mayer of Notre Dame. I've seen this guy play a lot. He's a big playmaker down the field, just takes over games. And he's got that attitude you like, that flex attitude when he makes catches. He just pumps his fists in the air. He's all about it. He's dominant. He's very vocal here. So I see a little bit of Travis Kelce in him, a little bit of George Kittle. He loves playing the game, very passionate. I think he wants to be a very good student of the game. Kelce has become that over the years. And Mayer really just looks the part of that number one dominant tight end. And look, some people are questioning some of the testing he had at the combine, but when he's on the field, you know he's there, and you got to cover him, and you got to worry about him all over. So I think this guy's going to step up as a number one. And I think he's one of those guys that can break the mold and deliver as a rookie here. So something you want to look at with Michael Mayer. And great size for sure with him, just behemoth out there at 6'5", 249, so classic size. He just will go out and stretch the field when needed, work in the red zone, and can get physical with his frame, and a good blocker, which is going to keep him on the field, which is just important. You don't want some of these guys being a move, limited guy with liabilities and blocking that can stay in the field. So we look at Michael Mayer, none of those concerns here for the Notre Dame tight end. Really like him. I mean, made a lot of big plays with different quarterbacks, and that's what he can do. He can stretch the field, but also dominate in a short area. That's what you're going to get for Michael Mayer. And you look at the Packers in the first round, that's a great fit for what he can do, because you look at him and his skill set. The Packers need a tight end. Robert Tonyan is now with the Bears. Marcedes Lewis was just an ancient blocker there. So now Michael Mayer replaces him all in one package and can make a lot of plays. I would have said the Patriots were a great fit, but now they added Mike Gesicki with Hunter Henry, so that's a little bit not as appealing. But the Packers clearly have avoided tight end. They've been mocked heavily to take Michael Mayer with that early pick in the first round. So really love it. And again, if they make that deal with the Jets with Aaron Rodgers and they get that pick from the Jets, I think he could go as early as 13. So 13, 15, wherever you look at it, he's a great fit for the Packers. So that's where we want him to go for impact. Another good landing spot would be the Lions in the first round. Now, I don't know if the Lions are going to invest this much in an offensive luxury pick. When they have Marvin Jones, they're getting Jameson Williams at full speed. They got Amon-Ra St. Brown. They got a lot of weapons in the passing game already, and they're more of an 11 personnel team. But they did lose TJ Hawkinson. There's not a lot to see at tight end in Detroit. They got 2 first-round picks. So does Michael Mayer last till 16? That's the question mark. I don't think the Lions necessarily take him early here in the top 10, but if he's in that Lions range in the next pick, you definitely go for him. Also look later in the round, the Buccaneers, where they go after him here after saying goodbye to Cameron Brate. Do they see him as an upgrade, or do they like Cade Otton there? So I think for sure the Packers by far the number one best fit. The Lions would be second here on that list for Michael Mayer and his fantasy football value in the 2023 and beyond. Of course, we want to be a consistent option for us in the top 12. And I think you look at it, typically it takes 1 year, as we said, a year or two where it kicks in for these tight ends to really produce. But overall, Mayer's one of those guys, if you plug and play him in the right spot, I think you can have immediate fantasy football value. A little bit like Isaiah Likely last year, filling in when he needed to for Mark Andrews and put up the numbers. I think Mayer's that potential. Sometimes you don't get a good landing spot where you can be the clear number one tight end or stay on the field as a receiver, but those are not concerns here with Michael Mayer. All right, he's the number one tight end of the board. We'll expand upon my number 2 tight end and to really give him his own segment as well. That's how special he is. He's a potential first-round pick, Dalton Kincaid out of Utah. So we'll talk about him, and then we'll look at my tight ends 3 to 10 in a very loaded class. It's a very unusual to have this much receiving talent in a draft involving tight ends, but really excited to break down the rest of it on today's show. I'm also really excited to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. It's America's number one sportsbook, and it's a great time of year to get in on it with baseball, grand slams, no hitters, double plays. They're back. There's no better place to get in on that MLB action than FanDuel. That's because right now, new customers to FanDuel can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Check it out on your screen. If you're looking on YouTube, that's where you go, FanDuel.com/lockedon to take advantage of a no-sweat first bet. There, you get $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. You can look at home runs, and we always like to look at the superstars. So I like the Cardinals, so I look at Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado and making some plays there. I also like Jack Flaherty on the mound for the Cards, so always look for him with a strikeout. So you can bet on your favorite team. You can bet on a team that you trust here offensively or pitching-wise to get you the numbers you're looking for. So do that, as well as just look at the games themselves, the game line. So you can build a single-game parlay with your favorite matchup of the day as well. It could be involving your favorite team or just a pitching duel that you really like or a home run and hitting duel that you really like. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball and a proud sponsor here of betting on the Locked On Network. All right, time to continue the show and break down more tight ends that have big-time value in the 2020 NFL. Dalton Kincaid is definitely one of those players. 6'4", 246. I love this receiver skill. So Michael Mayer is a very good, well-rounded tight end. I think Michael Mayer is very good, but I think Dalton Kincaid might be just a little bit plus as a receiver than Mayer in that capacity. So would not surprise me if Kincaid ends up being a little bit more of the Kelsey type, and the George Kittle type is Michael Mayer in this draft, where may not always get the receiving numbers, but Mayer can definitely dominate games, where Kincaid might be more as a dedicated receiver and settle in more into his blocking role here, just like Travis Kelsey is an amazing athlete out of Cincinnati. Very good athleticism for Dalton Kincaid, can get in them in the open field, can run really well. Also a very good route runner and hands to go with it. So usually you're a little bit raw in those areas if you're just a very blindingly fast athlete at tight end, but he's pretty polished here. And their only concern, he had a little bit of an injury issue, but very similar in a mild way to what Gronk had coming out of Arizona. So really I like Kincaid out of Utah. Really can improve himself as a blocker to be more effective all around, and that would really help him stay on the field to be very productive. Now, in the first round, if he should go in the back end, definitely the Bengals are the best fit. They need a receiving tight end. They moved on from C.J. Uzomah and Hayden Hurst in the last 2 off seasons. Drew Sample also not in the mix. They're trying to get some value there at that position. Took a shot at Irv Smith Jr. out of the Vikings, but Dalton Kincaid could give that backup option to Joe Burrow should they have any snags with especially contracted T. Higgins. I think they'll take care of Jamar Chase, or they have to move on from Tyler Boyd. I think that gives another option here. So I really like him on the Bengals. But another team that fits really well, the Raiders. We talked about their Josh McDaniels type offense. The Raiders were gutted at tight end. They intentionally traded Darren Waller to the Giants, but Foster Moreau, who was the top backup, he has a medical issue, so he's going to have to sit out the season. So Austin Hooper and O.J. Howard are just not going to cut it. It's a mishmash of kind of cast-offs from other teams. Hooper, most recently the Titans. Howard, most recently of the Texans. So Dalton Kincaid is a different type of receiver than both those guys, and he can act a little bit as a wide receiver as well. So he's a little bit of Evan Ingram in him as well, so a little bit maybe of a late bloomer. But I do like Kincaid to be very effective as a receiver, and I think there's a lot of good landing spots. But I think the Bengals and Raiders top those for sure based on where they're drafting. So are you looking at the Bengals as a luxury late first-round pick or the Raiders as a second-round pick? That's where I've had it most mocked there. Also, the Lions, we talked about them. If they pass on Mayer in the first round or the Packers jump on him before they pick, you look at Kincaid being an option for them to more diversify and make their passing game even more dynamic, minus T.J. Hawkinson. All right, so there you have the second best tight end on the board. So Michael Mayer and Dalton Kincaid are going to go in primo spots here to produce. So the others are maybe going into situations where they might have to share in 12 personnel and play off a blocking tight end, or be the blocker that learns to develop into receiver. So we'll break those players down, numbers 3 through 10 at tight end on my board in the final segment here on Locked On Fantasy Football. There's an exciting new game that you can get into, and today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM, which is that game. You've heard me talk about this mobile game app, and it's exciting there that you can check out. And right now there's a special offer. You can check it out on the screen there on YouTube that you can take advantage of. And if you wanted to ever be a general manager, this would be the game you would try, because you can look at it and say, hey, it might be easy to do this. No, it's not as easy as you might think to create a dynasty. So when you play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons to lead your team to glory. And trying to build a historic dynasty, really fun to play. Like, I got into it very challenging. I got into a league there with the Locked On folks, and I tried to get into the game. It's very challenging. I love it because I want to keep pushing and to have a lot of fun playing it. And really, the best way to do that is keep playing it, because, look, we want to be the GM, and we're very competitive. We're playing fantasy football, so really it's that type of deal here. What's a different type of fantasy football? Like, I tend to go for maybe making too many upside decisions, getting rid of good veteran players, so you can make those type of decisions and learn from them and get better. And that's what I love about Ultimate Football GM. It's just a realistic game world there. So, and I really enjoy battling through that and facing the competition or trying to build that winner, as well as getting the best production from that winner on the field. So you don't need Wi-Fi to play once you download Ultimate Football GM. You can play an app play. You got to download that app and play today. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, managing all the finances, including negotiating player salaries and terms. You can navigate your franchise through the draft injuries, player personnel issues, and all the ups and downs of the regular season. Again, very challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free, playable offline, play on the go, play as you want and when you want to. Locked On Fantasy Football listeners have a special deal. You can get a 100% free boost to your franchise when using promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. Check it out on the screen. That's Locked On in all caps, so make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. Subscribe and follow for free wherever you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. We're part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So now we're going to get to the best of the rest of this very strong tight end class in 2023. So we talked about Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid being potential first-rounders here and immediate impact players. Now, you might have to wait a little bit on these guys, but still good fantasy football fits. Darnell Washington really rising up the board, 6'7", 264 out of Georgia, strong, physical, very good run blocker, so he's going to be on the field. He's a little bit raw as a receiver, but very special. I would go to the Titans, maybe playing off Chiga Conquo, as they maybe go to 12 personnel back, or so many options. You can look at the Falcons are a little bit of an option. They did acquire Jonas Smith, but Jonas Smith has been injury prone, playing off Kyle Pitts. That wouldn't be the best situation there. But when you look at Washington, a little bit of a project, so you want him to maybe line up there and develop as a second tight end with some value here. But I have him go to the Titans in the second round. I think that makes a lot of sense. Conquo is someone they like with a thin the receiving core. So I can see a situation where that develops to Mike Vrabel, where you have that 12 personnel kind of really be what the core of what they do. All right, Luke Musgrave is next. He's out of Oregon State, just a real top receiving upside player. Now, another team looking for a tight end, and this could also be a play for Darnell Washington, but I think Musgrave is a really good fit at 6'6", 253 to be the replacement number one tight end for this team, the Commanders. Logan Thomas just hasn't been able to stay healthy. They need that key target here as they go forward. Sam Howell, quarterback. So I think Luke Musgrave would make a lot of sense. Play off the receivers and Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. Work in the middle of the field, be a co-receiver there with Curtis Samuel. So really like Luke Musgrave. That's a good landing spot as well, the Commanders, to make a lot of plays here in the NFL. Next is Sam Laporta out of Iowa. Some people have a little bit higher, but I think Washington Musgrave a little bit higher upside. 6'3", 245 out of Iowa. Iowa's a tight end factory, we know, from going back all the way to Dallas Clark. But we've also had George Kittle be a factor as well. And then the double take of Noah Fant and TJ Hawkinson, first rounders. Fant and Hawkinson now on their second teams being effective with the Seahawks and Vikings, respectively. So Laporta has the pedigree in his favor. Now, I can see him being a good fit for the Lions. I mean, Hawkinson is who they had there. I also see him a good fit for the Dolphins. They lost Mike Gesicki, maybe a way to get him involved. But we know that there was an Iowa tight end for Mike McDaniel in San Francisco with George Kittle. So you get Laporta in that mix. So Dolphins are a team looking for that type of help. They can look at Darnell Washington as well. They did get Randy McMichael out of Georgia, so something to look at there. But Laporta would be a great fit, I think, in a 49er style offense. I would look at the Texans, but they did go sign Dalton Schultz, so this is a better spot here with the Dolphins losing one like Gesicki to go after a different tight end here. And I do like Sam Laporta is a third-round pick. I do like Washington Musgrave, a little bit upside second round. But second round, third round, these are all guys that I look at in day two having some impact in the draft. Another guy like Tucker Kraft, and he could be really number 3 in this class if it wasn't for the emergence of Washington Musgrave and Laporta being pretty solid here. I look at Kraft out of South Dakota State, strong, athletic, good receiver. We also saw who else from this kind of area of the country? Dallas Goedert being very productive. So Tucker Kraft, a little bit of Dallas Goedert here, got to work on his hands route running technique, become a little bit more consistent everywhere. But we saw that with Goddard, he finally got there and made a lot of plays. So really like Tucker Kraft, and I have him go to the Chargers. They're potentially adding a tight end this draft. They did bring back Donald Parham, but they could move on from Gerald Everett pretty easily, and tight end is something they could target as well as that third receiver to go. Maybe a little bit upgrade from Josh Palmer as an outside threat there with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, maybe needing to look at replacements and target help there. And I think the Chargers make a lot of sense for players such as Tucker Kraft. All right, let's look at number 7. Cameron Latu of Alabama, 6'4", 242. Very solid blocking tight end, very smart, versatile, can be an impactful receiver in time. I think he has to complement. So these are the guys that we're going to wait a little bit for their value to materialize. So I'm behind Evan Ingram. Now, Evan Ingram is playing on the franchise tag there for the Jaguars. So we'll see how it plays out, how long they're in with Ingram at their key tight end. He's coming off their tight end 1 fantasy football season. So Cameron Latu would be a good complementary tight end there in Jacksonville. Zach Kuntz is the next guy that you look at from Old Dominion, 6'7", 255. Zach Kuntz is really good here, size, athleticism, a small school prospect. So I do like him. If the Bengals don't go in that direction early at tight end, they can develop him here a little bit behind Irv Smith Jr., take their shot at both. And so Zach Kuntz out of Old Dominion, 6'7", 255. Well, I love that size as a later round potential guy, such as Darrell Washington is from Georgia, that same type of receiver that you can look at here. So Zach Kuntz a good guy to look at late. And then maybe also the Commanders look at him, Old Dominion connection. That's where Taylor Heineke went. So maybe an option as well developmentally for the Falcons there behind Jonas Smith. All right. Number 9, we look at Will Mallory of Miami. Miami had a good tradition in the past. We look at Jeremy Shockey and Kellen Winslow and some of those tight ends that really came through. Bubba Franks starting it a little bit earlier than that. So we know Miami's had decent pass to tight end. Athletic, agile receiving talent here. He's got to have to line up offline here. So something to look at. I do like him maybe being developed by the Panthers, who got Hayden Hurst, but they don't have a lot of tight end with Tommy Trumbull and Ian Thomas behind. So maybe a little bit of project there for Frank Reich, who likes collecting tight ends, as we saw in Indianapolis. And finally, number 10, he could be in play also for the Bengals out of Cincinnati, the university, I should say, Josh Weil. They're 6'6", 248. He could be an option for the Falcons to reunite him with Desmond Ridder. Natural receiving skills and scheming skills as well, because he can run great routes, good foundation there. He got a little bit more consistent with his hands and uses his body a little bit more in his routes, but Josh Weil is a worthy project here. So when I say project, I think that makes sense to put him behind Dalton Schultz or to establish to maybe veteran tight end in another situation. So I can go to the Texans in the 5th round. So a lot of good values all the way through deep day 3 that you look at. So we're definitely looking at the day 1 and day 2 guys, first round, second, third round as being very valuable here, but a lot of projects that you look at beyond going deep. And I think it goes even much deeper than Josh Weil of Cincinnati. So really like this class of tight ends, and there's going to be a lot of guys that have fantasy football impact we're going to be drafting here for years to come. Thanks a lot for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We're free and available on all platforms. We'll continue breaking down the NFL offseason on our next episode. Now, make your second listen Locked On NFL Scouting with the draft tips from free agency draft, salary cap management, and more. Join NFL experts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino as they take you through what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise every Monday through Friday. Find Locked On NFL Scouting with the draft leads wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For Locked On Fantasy Football, again, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time here on Locked On Fantasy Football.